My son, you see this pot? Make sure you bury it in every apartment you have across the state to obtain the destiny of the tenant to replace your wealth, Baba Oju said. Bayo received the pot and replied, I will do as you say. There lived a man named Bayo, a towering figure in the real estate business. Bayo was a man of quiet charm and sharp intellect, known for his meteoric rise in a competitive industry where only the shrewdest survived. His name carried weight in elite circles, and his company, Golden Estates, was synonymous with luxury, innovation, and exclusivity. Bayo's business portfolio was as vast as the land he dealt in. From sprawling residential estates in the heart of the city to commercial properties in the suburbs, his empire extended across the state. People marveled at how quickly he rose to prominence, seemingly outpacing competitors who had been in the game for decades. Every project he touched turned to gold, as though he had an uncanny knack for picking the most lucrative locations and attracting the wealthiest clients. Despite his wealth, Bayo lived alone. At 38 years old, he was still single, which raised questions among those who knew him. Some speculated he was too focused on his business to entertain relationships, while others whispered that he simply didn't want to share his immense wealth. He was a private man, rarely seen at social gatherings, and his personal life was a mystery. But beneath the surface, Bayo's business had an unusual edge, an element that was both his secret weapon and his darkest secret. Every house or estate he developed carried a hidden ritual, performed under the cloak of night. Unknown to his clients, Bayo had forged a pact with a shadowy spiritual society during the early days of his career. This pact guaranteed his success, but at a cost. Each property he sold or rented carried an unseen curse, designed to drain the life force and destinies of its occupants. Over time, the spiritual energy extracted from these unsuspecting residents was channeled back to Bayo, fortifying his wealth, influence, and power. Bayo's life was a paradox, a man celebrated as a visionary, yet cloaked in secrets, a king of real estate who thrived on the misfortune of others. His empire grew larger by the day, but with every new house sold, the weight of his pact grew heavier. Deep down, he knew that the price of his success might one day be more than he could bear. Over time, a pattern began to emerge among those who had rented or purchased properties developed by Golden Estates. It started subtly, whispers at first, passed among friends and relatives, and then growing into widespread murmurs that refused to be ignored. Many of the tenants and homeowners reported a disturbing trend. Once they moved into the houses, their lives took a sharp turn for the worse. Entrepreneurs who had previously enjoyed thriving businesses suddenly found themselves grappling with inexplicable financial losses. Contracts that were once easy to secure began slipping through their fingers, and longtime clients mysteriously withdrew their patronage. It wasn't just one or two businesses. Entire families reported a cascading series of failures that seemed to radiate from the moment they took possession of their new homes. Others spoke of career setbacks that left them baffled. High-ranking professionals with years of experience suddenly found themselves overlooked for promotions, or worse, inexplicably dismissed. It was as though the drive and energy that had once propelled their success had been sapped, leaving behind a shadow of their former selves. Some tried to bounce back, moving out of the houses and starting afresh elsewhere, but their fortunes seemed to plummet further, as if an unseen force clung to them, dragging them down. As the months went by, Bayo began to notice a troubling shift in his once flourishing empire. The usual flood of clients had slowed to a trickle, and whispers of dissatisfaction and strange misfortunes among his tenants began to affect his reputation. While the public couldn't connect the dots to anything concrete, the growing unease was enough to dissuade potential buyers and tenants. His properties, which once sold out before construction even finished, now sat idle on the market. It was a reality Bayo had never faced before, and it gnawed at him. For a man as ambitious as Bayo, the mere hint of decline was unacceptable. He had worked tirelessly to build his empire, and the thought of losing it all filled him with dread. But more than that, his hunger for power and recognition was insatiable. Bayo didn't just want to be a successful real estate mogul. He wanted to be a name etched into the annals of history as one of the greatest investors the country had ever seen. He craved the respect and envy of his peers, the kind that came with being untouchable. In his desperation, he reached out to an old friend, someone he had long admired for his uncanny ability to thrive in the business no matter the market conditions. His friend, a man known for his luxurious properties and extravagant lifestyle, was rumored to have secrets of his own. Bayo decided it was time to uncover those secrets. After all, if his friend could stay on top, perhaps he could learn to do the same, and more. The two met late one evening at an upscale lounge in the city, their conversation hushed but intense. Bayo laid his worries bare, sharing the decline in his business and his growing need to regain dominance. His friend, leaning back in his chair with a knowing smirk, listened patiently. After a long pause, he leaned in and said, "Bayo, there are levels to this game, and you've only scratched the surface. If you want to play at the top, you have to make sacrifices." Intrigued but wary, Bayo pressed for more details. His friend hesitated for a moment, as though weighing the risk of revealing too much, before finally saying, "There's someone who can help. A man deep in the countryside, far from the prying eyes of the city. But know this, once you step onto this path, there's no turning back." Desperate times called for desperate measures. Without hesitation, Bayo agreed to meet the man his friend spoke of. A few days later, they embarked on a journey to a remote village, the road winding through dense forests and desolate plains. The destination was an old, weathered compound surrounded by overgrown shrubs. The air was thick with the smell of herbs and earth, and the atmosphere carried an eerie stillness. Inside the compound sat an elderly herbalist, his presence commanding despite his frail frame. His eyes, sharp and piercing, seemed to see straight through Bayo. After a brief exchange, Bayo's friend explained the purpose of their visit, and the herbalist nodded knowingly, as though he had been expecting them. The herbalist began his ritual, chanting in a low, rhythmic voice that seemed to echo off the walls. After what felt like an eternity, he turned to Bayo and said, "You seek greatness beyond your reach. To have it, you must do as I say without question." Bayo nodded eagerly, his ambition outweighing any apprehension. The herbalist handed him a small, intricately carved native pot, its surface adorned with mysterious symbols. "This pot," the herbalist explained, "is the key to your success. Bury it in the bathroom of every house you own or build. It will bind the fortunes of those who live there to you, ensuring your power grows with every property. But beware, this power comes at a price." Bayo swallowed hard, his heart racing. He didn't dare ask what the price was, for now, all that mattered was regaining his crown. With the pot in hand, he left the herbalist's compound, his mind filled with thoughts of domination and the risks he was willing to take to claim it. As the car sped back toward the city, the night seemed darker, the air heavier, as though the world itself had shifted slightly, ominously, under the weight of his new decision. The compound was one of Bayo's finest properties, a modest yet elegant collection of apartments designed to cater to middle-class families looking for a comfortable home in the bustling city, made it the perfect choice for couples starting anew. It was this very apartment that caught the eye of a man named Chike and his wife Ada when they first visited. Chike, a budding entrepreneur in the tech industry, and Ada, a primary school teacher with a calm, nurturing demeanor, were ecstatic when they secured the space. The couple had been searching for a decent home for months, and this apartment felt like a dream come true. The location was ideal, close to the city center, yet far enough to enjoy some peace. The rent, though slightly above their budget, was worth the comfort and elegance the place offered. Moving in was an exciting affair. The couple arrived with only a handful of belongings, a mattress, a small table, and a few chairs, but their joy was palpable. Bayo, who lived in the main house at the front of the compound, watched them settle in from a distance. He rarely interacted with his tenants, preferring to maintain an air of mystery. Still, he nodded politely when Chike approached him to express gratitude for the opportunity to rent such a beautiful home. At first, everything seemed perfect. Chike and Ada quickly made the apartment their own, adding curtains, artwork, and a few potted plants that brightened the space. Over the first 6 months, their lives flourished. Chike's tech business began gaining traction, landing him his first major client within 3 months of moving in. The income was a relief, allowing them to pay off debts and even upgrade some of their furniture. Ada, too, found joy in her work, often bringing home small gifts from her students as tokens of appreciation. But beneath the surface, a silent storm was brewing, one that neither Chike nor Ada nor the other tenants could see. The apartment's bathroom, like all others in the compound, housed a secret that bound its occupants to a destiny they could not escape. For now, however, the couple remained blissfully unaware, enjoying the peace and prosperity they had always dreamed of. Little did they know, the clock was ticking, and the shadow of the pact that had made their home possible was inching closer with each passing day. For now, the smiles and laughter continued, but the air around the compound seemed heavier, charged with an energy only the unseen could sense. It started subtly, like a faint whisper that gradually grew into an unbearable roar. At first, Chike and Ada dismissed the small inconveniences as part of life's unpredictability. Chike's tech business, once a beacon of hope, began encountering odd setbacks. Deals that were certain to close fell through for inexplicable reasons, and clients that once praised his work suddenly stopped responding. It's just bad luck, Chike told himself, though the growing unease in his voice betrayed his words. Ada, too, began noticing strange changes. Her once vibrant and enthusiastic energy at work started fading. Her students, who previously adored her, became restless and difficult to manage. Even her colleagues, who had once been close friends, seemed distant. "It feels like the world is turning against us," she confided in Chike one evening, her voice trembling. "I don't understand what's happening." As the weeks turned into months, their troubles intensified. The breaking point came when Chike fell seriously ill, his once strong frame reduced to a shadow of itself. Doctors could find no medical explanation for his condition, leaving Ada desperate for answers. "We can't keep living like this," she told Chike one evening, her voice filled with determination. "I think we need to speak to Pastor Emmanuel. He might help us understand what's going on." Though hesitant, Chike agreed. "Fine," he said quietly. "If it gives you peace, we'll go." The next day, they visited the modest church on the outskirts of town. Pastor Emmanuel, a gentleman with a calm and reassuring presence, listened intently as Chike and Ada poured out their hearts. When they finished, he sat in silence for a moment, his eyes closed in deep thought. "Your struggles are not ordinary," the pastor finally said, his voice steady. "What you're experiencing is not just physical, it's spiritual. There is a dark force at work, tied to the place where you live. I sense a heavy presence, something that feeds on your blessings and drains your joy." Chike frowned, the skepticism clear on his face. "You're saying our house is cursed? That doesn't make sense. It's just a house." Pastor Emmanuel met his gaze calmly. "Many battles in life are unseen, Chike. Sometimes the very places we think are safe become the grounds for spiritual warfare. I cannot tell you exactly what it is, but there is an evil force in your home, and it is the source of your troubles." Ada gripped Chike's hand tightly, her voice trembling. "Pastor, what do we do? How do we fight this?" The pastor leaned forward, his expression serious but kind. "You must pray. Pray together, fervently and without ceasing. Dedicate your home to God and ask for His protection. I will also pray with you and for you, but the strength of your faith will be your greatest weapon." "But what if it's not enough?" Chike asked, his voice tinged with doubt. "What if things don't change?" Pastor Emmanuel smiled gently. "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, Chike. It may not make sense now, but trust that God is greater than whatever darkness exists in your home. He will see you through this." Though still uncertain, Chike and Ada left the church with a renewed sense of hope. The pastor's words gave them the courage to confront the unseen battle they had been ignoring for so long. As they returned to their apartment, the air felt heavier, as though the house itself knew they were preparing to fight back. Whatever lay ahead, they were determined to reclaim their peace no matter the cost. That night, as the darkness wrapped itself around their small apartment, Chike and Ada knelt together in the living room and began to pray. It wasn't long before their midnight prayers began to stir the atmosphere, not just spiritually, but physically. The once quiet compound now echoed with their voices, their words bouncing off the walls and carrying into the still night. Bayo, who lived in the main house at the front of the compound, was the first to notice. At first, he dismissed it, thinking the couple would tire of their new routine. But night after night, their voices grew louder, and Bayo's irritation grew with it. By the second week, he could no longer ignore it. One morning, as Chike stepped out of his apartment, he found Bayo waiting near the gate, arms crossed and face set in a scowl. "Mr. Chike," Bayo began, his voice calm but laced with irritation, "I need to speak with you." Chike, caught off guard, nodded. "Of course, sir. Is there a problem?" Bayo didn't waste any time. "Yes, there is. Your prayers in the middle of the night are disturbing the peace of the compound. This is a residential area, not a church. People are trying to sleep." Chike blinked, surprised. "I'm sorry if it's been disruptive, but we're going through a lot, and this is something we need to do. It's not permanent." "I don't care what you're going through," Bayo interrupted, his tone sharpening. "You need to stop. Find another time to pray or keep it down. I won't tolerate this in my property." Ada, who had stepped out to join the conversation, frowned. "With all due respect, sir," she said, her voice firm but respectful. "We're not trying to disturb anyone. We're simply praying for our family. If it's too loud, we'll try to lower our voices, but we can't stop." Bayo's eyes narrowed. "I don't think you understand me. This is my compound, and I set the rules. If you can't follow them, perhaps you should consider finding another place to live." Chike felt a surge of frustration but held his tongue. Ada, however, wasn't finished. "Sir," she said, meeting Bayo's gaze, "we are not breaking any laws by praying in our home. If it's a matter of volume, we'll address it, but you can't stop us from calling on God." Bayo's lips pressed into a thin line, his irritation barely concealed. "This is your last warning," he said coldly. "If I hear another word from your apartment at night, there will be consequences." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Chike and Ada standing in stunned silence. That night, as they knelt to pray, their voices were quieter, but no less determined. "Lord," Ada whispered, her hands clasped tightly, "whatever darkness is fighting us, let it be exposed and destroyed. Strengthen us to stand firm, no matter what comes." Chike, his voice low but resolute, added, "We will not be moved, God, not by fear, not by threats. You are our refuge." Meanwhile, in the main house, Bayo sat in his study, his jaw clenched and his heart pounding. He could feel the unease creeping in, an invisible tension that told him the tide was beginning to turn. "We cannot stop," Ada told Chike one evening as they prepared for another midnight prayer. "This isn't just about us. Something deeper is happening, and we must trust God to fight for us." Chike nodded, though the exhaustion was clear in his eyes. "I know, I feel it too, but it's hard when even our landlord seems bent on silencing us." Their prayers once again began to echo through the compound, much to Bayo's growing frustration. In the main house, he could hear their voices faintly but persistently, like a thorn in his side that refused to be removed. Every night, he found himself lying awake, his anger boiling over as their prayers seemed to chip away at the darkness he had carefully cultivated. The breaking point came a week later. Early one morning, Bayo stormed over to their apartment, his face contorted with fury. He knocked loudly on their door, his fist pounding against the wood until Chike opened it, bleary-eyed but calm. "This is the last straw," Bayo bellowed, his voice echoing through the compound. "I warned you about disturbing the peace, and you've chosen to ignore me. You leave me no choice." Chike, startled by the outburst, stepped forward. "Sir, we've tried to keep our voices down. We're not trying to disrespect you, but I don't care about your excuses." Bayo interrupted, his voice sharp. "You're a nuisance to this compound, and I will not tolerate it any longer. Consider this your quick notice. You have 1 month to vacate this property." Ada, who had come to the door, gasped. "But we've paid our rent for the year," she protested. "You can't just throw us out like this," Bayo sneered. "This is my property. I have every right to decide who stays and who goes. If you don't leave willingly, I'll make sure you regret it." Chike stepped in front of Ada, his voice calm but firm. "We will leave, but not before our rent expires. We've paid for our time here, and we intend to use it." Bayo's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a menacing tone. "You'll regret this decision. Mark my words." With that, he turned on his heel and stormed back to the main house. Chike and Ada stood in silence, the weight of the confrontation heavy in the air. "What do we do now?" Ada whispered, her voice trembling. "We stay," Chike said firmly. "We've done nothing wrong, and we won't be bullied into leaving. We'll keep praying, and we'll trust God to handle this." Meanwhile, in the privacy of the main house, Bayo seethed with anger. Their refusal to leave was a direct challenge to his authority, and he would not stand for it. The prayers that filled the night were more than an annoyance. They were a threat, a disruption to the delicate balance of his secret practices. The next day, Bayo packed a small bag and left the city under the guise of handling business matters. His real destination, however, was far from any corporate office. He traveled deep into the countryside, returning to the herbalist he had visited months earlier. The old man, seated in the same weathered compound, greeted him with a knowing look. "You have returned," the herbalist said, his voice calm but laced with curiosity. "What troubles you now?" Bayo wasted no time. "There is a tenant in my compound. 2, actually, a man and his wife. They are disrupting everything with their prayers. I need them gone." The herbalist nodded slowly, stroking his chin. "Prayers, you say? Their words are troubling your work?" "Yes," Bayo replied, his frustration spilling over. "They refuse to leave, and their prayers are weakening the energy in my properties. I need you to help me make the man sick. If he's too weak to stay, they'll leave on their own." The herbalist sat in silence for a moment before rising to fetch his materials. "I will prepare what you need," he said. "But remember, every action comes with a price." Bayo nodded impatiently. "Just do it. I'll pay whatever it takes." As the herbalist began his ritual, Bayo felt a flicker of satisfaction. Soon, he thought, Chike and Ada would no longer be a problem. When the ritual was complete, he returned to the city, his mind racing with plans to reclaim control of his compound and silence the voices that threatened his carefully constructed world. Days turned into weeks, and despite their fervent prayers, Chike and Ada found themselves trapped in a relentless storm. Chike's health had taken a turn for the worse, his once bright eyes now carrying the weight of sleepless nights and endless frustrations. Ada too felt the strain, her energy depleted from the battles both seen and unseen. Though their faith remained strong, it was clear that something deeper was holding them back. "We need to go back to Pastor Emmanuel," Ada said one morning, her voice tinged with urgency. "I feel like there's more we need to know. Something isn't right about this house." Chike, though weary, nodded. "Let's go today," he agreed. "We can't keep living like this." Later that day, they returned to the small church on the outskirts of town. Pastor Emmanuel welcomed them warmly, but his face grew serious as they recounted the events since their last visit. "It seems your prayers have revealed much," he said, "but this battle is not yet over. There is still something hidden in your home, something anchoring the darkness to that place." Chike frowned, confusion etched across his face. "What do you mean, Pastor? What could be hidden there?" The pastor closed his eyes, muttering a quiet prayer before speaking again. "The Spirit has revealed that there is a pot, a cursed object, buried within your bathroom. It is the source of your troubles. Until it is removed, the darkness will remain." Ada gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "A pot? Buried in the ground? How did it get there?" "It was placed there by someone with malicious intent," Pastor Emmanuel explained. "It is tied to the forces draining your blessings. You must dig it out and destroy its power." Chike exchanged a glance with Ada, his resolve hardening. "How do we destroy it, Pastor?" he asked. "You won't need to destroy it yourself," the pastor replied, his voice steady. "Once you retrieve the pot, place it in front of your landlord's apartment. Do not speak to him and do not wait around. Leave it there and return to your home. When he sets his eyes on the pot, the consequences of his actions will find him." Ada hesitated. "But isn't that dangerous for us, Pastor?" "Have no fear," the pastor assured her. "You are under God's protection. The pot's power will turn against its creator, not you. Trust in the Lord, and he will fight for you." With their instructions clear, Chike and Ada returned home, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and determination. That afternoon, Chike armed himself with a small shovel, and the couple entered their bathroom, their prayers filling the air as they began to dig. The floor was tough, and sweat dripped from Chike's brow as he worked tirelessly. Ada knelt beside him, whispering prayers for strength and protection. After what felt like hours, the shovel hit something solid. Chike's heart raced as he carefully unearthed a small, intricately decorated pot. Its surface was dark and covered in strange markings that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. Ada shuddered at the sight of it, but she held firm. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to move quickly." With great care, Chike carried the pot out of their apartment, his hand shaking as he walked across the compound. The sun blazed above him, but the air seemed unnaturally heavy. He reached the front of the landlord's apartment and gently placed the pot on the ground, directly in front of the door. Without a word, he turned and walked back to his apartment, his steps hurried but deliberate. Once inside, Chike and Ada locked the door and knelt together in prayer. "Lord," Ada whispered, "we've done as you instructed. Protect us and let your will be done." Meanwhile, in the main house, Bayo was stepping outside to check on a construction delivery when his eyes fell on the pot near his doorstep. He froze, his breath hitching as an ominous chill ran down his spine. For a moment, he simply stared, his mind racing to comprehend how it had come to be there. Then, without warning, a sharp pain shot through his chest, and his knees buckled beneath him. Bayo collapsed onto the ground, clutching his chest, as the darkness he had wielded for so long finally turned against him. The moment Bayo collapsed, chaos erupted in the compound. His cries of pain drew the attention of his family, close friends, and tenants who quickly gathered around him. His body, once strong and commanding, was now visibly swollen, his face distorted, and his breathing labored. Fear and panic rippled through the group as they scrambled to get him to the hospital. "Someone call an ambulance," one of the tenants shouted, while another helped lift Bayo's trembling frame into a car. His closest friend, who had always admired his success, rode alongside him in silence, his mind racing with questions. What could have caused this sudden and horrifying condition? At the hospital, doctors and nurses worked frantically to stabilize him, but his condition only worsened. His body continued to swell, and strange, unexplainable rashes began to appear on his skin. His family doctor, who had treated Bayo for years, was at a loss. "This doesn't make sense," the doctor murmured, staring at the rapidly deteriorating man. "It's as though his body is fighting something we cannot see." Despite the best medical efforts, Bayo's health continued to spiral downward. He lay on the hospital bed, his face twisted with pain and fear. Deep down, he knew what was happening. The darkness he had harnessed for so long was finally consuming him. His mind raced with guilt, and his heart pounded with the weight of secrets he had kept hidden for years. Late that evening, with his family and close friends gathered around him, Bayo motioned for his family doctor to come closer. His voice was weak, but the urgency in his eyes was unmistakable. "Doctor," he croaked, "I need to confess, before it's too late." The doctor leaned in, his face a mixture of concern and confusion. "Confess? What do you mean?" Bayo swallowed hard, each breath a struggle. "The houses," he began, his voice trembling. "Every house I own, there are pots buried in the bathrooms. They are cursed." Gasps filled the room as his family and friends exchanged shocked glances. the doctor's brows furrowed, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. Cursed? Bayo, what are you talking about? I made a pact, Bayo continued, his words barely audible. Those pots, they steal the destinies of the people who live there, all for my success. His eyes filled with tears, and his voice cracked with desperation. I thought I could control it, but now, it's come for me. The room fell into stunned silence as the weight of his confession settled over everyone. His family members stared at him in disbelief, struggling to reconcile the man they knew with the horrifying truths he had just revealed. Bayo's breathing grew more shallow, his strength fading rapidly. Please, he whispered, his gaze darting between those gathered around him. Forgive me, I didn't know it would end like this. With those final words, Bayo's body went still. A heavy silence filled the room as the reality of his death sank in. The once powerful man, who had built an empire on the misfortunes of others, was gone. It didn't take long for word of Bayo's confession to spread. Within days, rumors of his practices went viral, spreading like wildfire across the state. Newspapers, blogs, and social media buzzed with the shocking tale of the real estate mogul who had used dark forces to build his fortune. Tenants, who had once considered themselves fortunate to live in his properties, now fled in droves, abandoning their homes out of fear of what the cursed pots might still hold. The once thriving compounds, filled with life and laughter, became eerily silent. Bayo's houses, which had once symbolized prestige and comfort, were now seen as haunted places to be avoided at all costs. Grass began to grow wildly around the empty buildings, their windows dark and lifeless. For Chike and Ada, the events felt surreal. They watched as their fellow tenants packed up and left, many too afraid to even speak of what had transpired. We stood our ground, Ada said quietly one evening as she and Chike prayed together. God revealed the truth, and justice was done. Though Bayo's death marked the end of his dark legacy, the scars of his actions lingered. His story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of greed and the consequences of meddling with forces beyond one's control. As for his properties, they remained abandoned, standing as silent witnesses to the secrets that had once been buried within their walls. After the chaos surrounding Bayo's death and the mass exodus from the compound, Chike and Ada knew it was time to leave. Though they had prayed and reclaimed their peace, the house carried too many memories of fear and darkness. With what little savings they had left, they moved into a modest apartment in another part of the city, ready to start afresh. It was as though a heavy weight had been lifted off their shoulders. Almost immediately, their lives began to change for the better. Chike's tech business, which had been on the brink of collapse, experienced a sudden resurgence. Old clients returned with renewed trust, and new opportunities began pouring in. Contracts that had once seemed unattainable now landed effortlessly in his lap. Ada, too, found joy and fulfillment in her teaching. Her students adored her, and she was soon promoted to a leadership role in her school. As their fortunes grew, Chike and Ada remained humble and steadfast in their faith. They continued their prayers, not out of desperation, but out of gratitude for the blessings they had received. Within a few years, they were able to save enough money to buy their own home, a beautiful, serene property filled with light and peace. Chike's business expanded beyond his wildest dreams. What began as a small tech startup evolved into a thriving company with branches across the country. Ada, inspired by her own journey, opened a foundation to support underprivileged children in their education. Together, they built a life filled with purpose, joy, and abundance. Never underestimate the power of faith, perseverance, and truth. In the face of darkness, light will always prevail, and integrity and resilience will lead to lasting success. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support helps grow this community and brings more thrilling stories your way. Stay tuned, another suspenseful tale is coming soon.